Hello and welcome to today's Gyan Darshan presentation. But unlike the presentations which we had earlier, we will be talking today quite generic topics now. Anything, I mean, we are not talking from any slides, we have not prepared any slides. Today the format will be quite generic, any type of questions we are going to take up now. So we have few students now in the studio, so we will be talking to them and discussing all their problems and solutions now. We are not talking about any specific topic today, although we had planned for applets and multimedia for the BIT 5th trimester, but today we have taken decision that let us have only questions and answer sessions. So all type of problems I will be taking. We have few students now in the studio, so all type of questions which they have specific to Java programming, but not at the syntax level at all, basic philosophy of the Java programming. Then we can take a few questions from the operating system you had in the first trimester BIT. Then we have but the more focus I will want to give you on the networking, because although you are in the 5th trimester or students are in the 2nd trimester, two batches going on parallel, but networking is one of the most important subjects, and from the next week, from Monday, we are going to start extensive discussions on the networking topics. Now we will start from the beginning and take you everything to the end. So more we will have a number of discussion sessions going on the networking, starting from the OSI model to the TCP IP model, so IEEE series and so on. But let me give you, just to start the discussion, we had a number of presentations for the on the Java programming and the networking, and let me give you just quick review and then we will have an answer session. So we have actually 2 or 3 presentation, might be more on Java programming language. We explained you how Java programming is different from other programming language. We explained you that Java is a true sense object oriented programming. All the features of object oriented programming is supported in Java programming language. So you have to understand object oriented programming feature, which we have been talking right from the beginning, that what is more important is to understand the architecture of the language than the syntax of the language. Syntax keeps on changing because language keeps on changing, but the architectures remain the same. For example, object oriented programming architecture is same, and it didn't arrive with the Java programming language. What I want to say, that Java didn't introduce object oriented programming. It was introduced long back in 1970, and Java was the some of the 3rd or 4th product to exploit object oriented programming. So you have to understand Java programming language in the 5th trimester also. In fact, sometimes in some coming Wednesday I will be talking about, in fact which I planned today, but somehow we have changed the format. What I want is that all the BIT 5th trimester students must have some at least 5 or 6 sessions on multimedia. Because Java supports you multimedia programming language. Java supports many other programming language feature, but Java also supports multimedia programming language. In fact, one of the basic advantage of Java is that they support multimedia. You can play audio, you can play the video, you can do animations, you can do image handling and so on. But today I will be not talking about at all at any syntax level. We have a little bit at later stage I will be talking about. So now why I want to request today from this studio to all our TLC coordinator, that at least must have all BIT 5th trimester students who have joined the multimedia streams, they must have at least 5 or 6 sessions on the multimedia component of Java programming language, which we have not earlier planned, but now they must have, multimedia students must get more features related to multimedia delivery scheme. So you must explain them how you can play the audio. You know, Java plays, I think earlier Java releases had only one type of audio file, .au extension, what you have in the Unix operating system, but now most of the Java releases, now they are supporting different type of audio files, MIDI files and so on. And the second one is that, so and also you must understand how to play with image, how to do the animations, how to control flickering on the animations. So this is the one of the topic which you have to, again at least 5 or 6 sessions you have to deliver all those. I mean, the students must have some practical sessions on the multimedia component of Java programming language. And again from this studio, again I will do some presentation of multimedia component in Java for BIT 5th trimester multimedia streams now. And today I will give you some topics related to the, and then we will talk about little bit of networking. You know that basically how we are going to plan to deliver networking feature, because we found that networking is one of the most difficult subject and more conceptual subject which you have compared to all the courses which you have in the whole HND or BIT program. So you have to give lots of emphasis on the networking. because we have been telling you lots of time that today everything is designed around the network. Even the basic definition of the computer also has changed. We don't say that computer is electronic device which does this thing, arithmetic and logical operation. Is basically today we say the computer is the network. All the software, all the hardware are today designed around the network. So network subject has to be given top priority basically. And what we are doing here at the up to the HND level now, you have to understand the OSI model very well, you have to understand the TCP IP model very well, you have to understand some of the what is the job of the data link layer. Like for example, little bit you have to understand how does go back in protocol work, how does selective repeat protocol work, what is the basic characteristic of any protocol. For example, if I take protocol, let's say TCP IP, or let's say if I take a protocol called UDP, if I have to try to compare these two protocols, then at least you have to understand what are the basic parameters on which protocol is to be compared. Or let's say you take any protocol X at a particular layer X and you try to compare that, what are the important features which you have to consider when I am trying to compare these two protocols at particular layer. So we will talk about, so you have to understand, like for example, flow control is one of the important parameter while you compare the one protocol to another protocol. Then what we are talking about is the how the connection establishment takes place, how the connection releases take place, and so on, how you handle what we call them congestions control and so on. So there are many parameters to compare any protocol from one to another, but all depends upon at which layer we are talking about. Let us say for example, if I am talking about any protocol at data link layer, then all the issues which comes at the transport layer we don't we consider. In fact, data link layer and the transport layer, you have many things are common, like flow control you always consider them, but when we try to compare any protocols at the routing level, at the let's say network layer, we don't consider many parameters because those parameters are not very much relevant and so on. So basically you have to understand the most important topic in the network for the BIT students up to HND level is that they must understand the at least the second layer, that is data link layer. You know that data link layer divided into two sub layers. One deals with the what we call them is random access protocol, we sometimes say, or media access control layer and so on, which basically deals with all set of protocols which try to compete for particular resources and so on. So MAC layer is one of the most important sub layer, or most of the important protocols. MAC layer protocols are most important protocols which you have to understand at up to HND level. As you go higher, we will talk about all types of different layers, protocols and so on. So this is basically today I want to consider, I want to take up all the generic question. In fact, we are planning now that from next time, once we finish all the basic recordings, then we have simple questions answer discussion, all types of problem which you come across in your TLC, we will discuss it here and try to sort out those problems now. So now with this I will just hand over. The questions should be relevant to not at the syntax level in Java or at the very what we call them format level in the networking level. Simply conceptual general problem question can be asked to me related to operating system, or let us say the hardware component part of it, Java programming, any other problems which you have faced so far or we have discussed so far can be taken up and so on. So this way we will have only questions and answer session, but from next time again just let me remind you once again two announcement I have made today. One, that all TLC's coordinator must support at least 5 or 6 sessions for BIT 5th trimesters on Java related to multimedia programming. You have to do something on the audio part, something you have to do on the animation, how to do animation, and finally how to do image handling. I think at least 5 or 6 sessions is sufficient enough that one is fully comfortable with the how to handle multimedia component in Java. This one, and the second one is that again that from next Monday we are going to start networking. We will start from quite basics, although we have a few recordings on the basics of computer network, but again we want you that most students should come and discuss all the problems they have come across. We will start from the very beginning, right from the OSI model, and will come up to the ISDN and ATM level and so on. So this is what we have given you the framework for which we can have, in which we can have a discussion session for today. Okay, now I think I will just hand over to you. And
sir, yes. What is the ZAR file?
In what where? In jar file is basically I think you related to the multimedia you are asking.
No sir, it's simple. Jar file, dot jar file.
I think this might be related to some compressed file perhaps. I think basically this type of file is used when you try to, no, basically when you want to send some multimedia file across the network, they put into certain format so that there is some compression. I think related to some compressions technique they use them and so on.
So what exactly is a Java virtual machine?
Java virtual machine is basically what happens something like this. It is just like interpreter now. You see what you have to understand like this one. Now Java virtual machine is you know that Java became very much popular only because the Java browser supported it. If Java browser didn't support the Java programming language, then Java couldn't have become very popular. Now what exactly we understand by that any browser supports the Java? So basically they have a Java virtual machine built into it. It is basically interpreter. Now this is interpreter is different from the compiler. You must understand what is the difference between interpreter and the compiler now. So Java virtual machine is basically a program, is a software, is a interpreter for the Java. It takes the compiled code which is generic code. It is basically bytecode form. It is not independent. It is independent of any machine platform, and finally it puts them into the code code compatible to the machine on which your program is going to work. Right, so get to point, you understand this one. So basically when you, for example, I download any program from outside, let's say I download applet. If I download applet, we don't know in who has written, in what platform he has written. So it's the job of the Java virtual machine to understand and try to put them into the machine compatible or the platform compatible environment, right. You must understand that when we say Java produces the Java, you must understand one thing, the Java compiler is common to all platforms now. It means that the text, whether you work into Sun Solaris or the Windows 95 or Unix machine, the Java compiler is common, means it produces the bytecode, and bytecode is somehow very much independent, not like a machine code, is somehow what we call them a stack language or registers language, but not a specific to any microprocessor at all. You understand, the normal compiler converts them into a specific microprocessor language. For example, if I convert Java into, let's say, the Pentium machine, then it converts, then Java compiler must be aware of how many registers they have, how many stacks they have, what is the size of registers and so on, but right, and what are the name of those registers A, B, C, D and so on. But when we talk of Java compiler, it does not consider those destinations related activities. Simply assume that is a virtual machine, contains stack and so on, not talking about in terms of actual name of the registers and actual size of the registers. So that register size is fixed, does not matter whether you compile them on 32-bit machine or 64-bit machine and so on. And Java virtual machine is interpreter which takes the input from as a bytecode and converts them into the exe file which will be accepted by that machine on which you are running a program. So all browser, I don't know about the Internet Explorer today, but all are basically supporting Java virtual machine. I am talking about Internet Explorer, I don't know about next release, but earlier they had supported now. Yes, please.
So why Java is called a strongly typed language?
Java is a strongly typed language. See, basically what you have is like this. In Java you have that see, first thing, that what exactly we understand by the strongly typed languages now. By strongly typed languages we understand is that forget about Java, if otherwise generic meaning of a strongly typed language or let's say less strongly typed languages. Like for example, take example of all the variables we use. I am just trying to simplify, but many other issues are involved with a strongly typed language features of, I mean, any language which provides now. That any language which are claimed to be a strongly typed language, it has two meaning now, that programmer must give lots of information to the compiler, so that compiler must be able to translate them according to the requirement of this one. Many language by default they take the whole data types and so on, but it means that if the one basic definition of a strongly typed language is that all the variables which have been used or which are going to be used in the program, before they are used they must be fully declared. You can't, this is basic. I mean, there are many other features specific to the Java, but the many language claiming to be a strongly typed language only because that all the variables they use or they have to be used, right, they must be declared before the hand. That is the basic definition of a strongly typed language. All the objects must have some instance of certain classes now. You can't think of any object which are not declared to be any class type. So, they must have, this is another definitions now, that all object must have some instance of particular classes now, that is another, right.
So what is the exact difference between C++ and Java?
Oh, there are many difference now. There are many differences. Basically, but the common difference is, first, both are claimed to be object-oriented programming language, right? In fact, some of the new features, some of the features which was introduced by C++, but was not used, but somehow it was not exploited very well by Java programming, by C++. Do you know what is that one? What I am talking about is, I will give you answer to little bit at a later stage, but right now what I am talking about is some of the features which were introduced by C++, but somehow a programmer, a C++ programmer knows that those features are not very much exploited by the C++ compiler. Do you know what that feature? Take example of, let us say, exception handling. Exception handling is one such feature in Java, in C++. Java directly takes exception handling from the C++. That it is not its own creation. Directly, the way C++ supports exception handling, and you must know that what is exception handling, runtime error control now. Java directly supports it, but in C++, any C++ programmer knows that it hardly uses any, or Java system does not force the user to use exception handling, right, but in Java, sorry, in C++, but in Java you have to use them. And in fact, if you want to make a robust program in Java without exception handling, you can't do it. So basically, let me answer to your questions now. See, there are many differences. Java is a, if you minus internet related, like applet related activity, Java is just like a C++, but Java has not been designed for handling only a standalone application. Java is always designed for a internet based programming, right. Internet is the heart of Java programming, just like a C is the heart of Unix, or Unix is the heart of C language, and so on. Same way, internet is the heart of Java programming language, whereas C++ was not designed for exploiting the internet. C++ not designing for distributed application system, number one. Number two, Java, to write any, today Java is designed for writing program for a machine which will have a more than one CPU. The other matter that even single CPU can run your Java program. Most of the Java compiler is written for a single von Neumann models now, but Java I am talking about multi-threading feature. Multi-threading is a good candidate for writing a program for a, what we call them, multiple CPU based system. Each thread can be passed to a particular CPU for running your program, and so on. So, the another advantage with Java is that Java supports you a multi-threaded programming environment, or let us say is a good candidate for parallel programming language. That is another important advantage. Java supports you multimedia programming. You can easily play with audio, that is built into it, right. And what else? You have a security feature that is very much important when you are writing a program around the internet. But C++ does not. C++ programmer or the inventor always thought the program has to be written into particular CPU, particular machine environment. Here we are talking about whole distributed environment. But the most beautiful part of the Java is that is basically platform independent. That is something we are talking about. Yes,
so,
please.
So why pointer is not in Java? Why pointer is not?
See,
not
basically pointer is supported in Java, but not at your disposal. That is the one point. Pointer is there, right? Pointer is supported in Java, but not at your disposal now. The reason being is that not very go for a long discussions now. Most of the virus were written into C language exploited the pointers very well, right. At pointer you have lower level control level addresses now, and you see if you examine the code of a virus written into C language, they have exploited to the pointers maximum level, right. Java you do not have, just for security purpose, that you can't tamper with the low level addresses. That is the one area. Yes, please.
So coming to networking, I would like to ask, you were talking about OSI level, OSI has a data link layer.
Yes.
Now IEEE had a standard for the data link layer that divided it into two parts, that is your logical link and your media access layer. And OSI only talked about a data link layer. Now why was this basically divided into two and not just kept as a data link layer?
So, basically it is somehow linked with the local area network. When the OSI model was designed, that time LAN was not very much popular, right? You understand this one? So, whole the LAN works entirely different way. LAN and the whole OSI, when they developed the OSI model, they didn't have a satellite based type of network in their mind, or let us say the local area network based mind and so on. That is why they had only one type of layer. Now, when local area network came, the whole topology changed, the way system works that changed. That is why the IEEE standard used the another type of, you understand this one? You understand the problem is that OSI itself didn't have the data, it didn't have the MAC layer part of it, because that time the one of the reason which I think is that that time local area network. What is the MAC layer which we are talking about? MAC layer is only meant for the local area network environment, or let us say satellite network type of environment. Now, that time this type of technology was not very much on the not was very much popular. That is why they couldn't consider it. Like for example, somebody had asked somewhere in that why C++ didn't support the network internet. Why today you have a that why you C++ didn't have the internet facility, why C++ didn't have the security feature. The reason was that that time internet was not very much popular, right? That time internet was not very much popular. Today internet is very popular, and that is why you have the new language exploited the internet. So that was the basic reason. LAN was not, because that was at that time, even if it was available, it was costly affair. So now it has become part of your systems now.
Sir, what does the term net BIOS mean?
Net BIOS?
Yes sir, BIOS.
No, in BIOS is something else. Net BIOS, let me recall, but BIOS you understand.
BIOS I understand. What is net BIOS?
In what context? Let me
so
just.
some input output systems.
No, that is it. That is BIOS now.
That's BIOS.
That's
so
the BIOS now. Basically, you know,
BIOS.
earlier I don't know about net BIOS, but BIOS I tell you that most of the earlier IBM PC contains one ROM. Know that ROM, right? So all your input output programs which checks all these your devices whether they are working correctly or not, whether your all your power system is working or not. So all these program was not related. Of course, this is part of the operating system, but that was separate so that it can work very fast. You understand, no? That was the basic idea, because there what you have is something which two ways. I am little bit deviating from your topic, but I am simply explaining you the really why some part of the operating system were kept into the chip and some part of the operating system were kept into the file, or let us say directory, or the software part of it. That one basic thing you must try to understand, that if something burnt into the hardware part of it, it works very fast. It works very fast, right? If something was stored into the software side, then it works slower, but you have a flexibility that you can change it very fast. No, when you have something into the software side, you can change it very fast, but if something into the hardware side, then again you can't change it very fast. But you can't change it. It's not very flexible, but system is much more reliable and it works very fast. For example, I will just give you an example. Let's say for example, I have a digital clock. You know that in digital clock also you have some counters, chips are there. These chips are basically programmed chips, right? Programmable, already programmed. The whole software is burnt into the chip itself. So if something goes wrong, or if you want to add some new feature, simply you have to throw it out. You can't do anything. So that must be some area, might be net BIOS by name itself, might be dealing with the networking part of also. That might be the basic feature too. But BIOS is something, that one is very much clear, that BIOS is part of the operating system, but is burnt into the what we call them, into the chip itself, which controls all the devices whether working properly or not before the you get the C prompt or the window prompt and so on, and that was put into the ROM chip. Yes,
sir, what is the difference between network operating system and distributed operating system?
Network operating system is see, right now frankly speaking, the textbook talks about something else, but I will give you some the textbook definitions also. But the problem is that somehow right now most of the operating system which is coming today, they take care of both the they have they is not a separate when somebody is designing today distributed operating system, they are not designing from the scratch. They are putting some utility on the top of the network operating system. But let me try to understand, or if tell me who can explain this term, what is the difference between network operating system and distributed operating system? Otherwise then who can explain these terms very well? Who is aware of what is the difference between network operating system and distributed operating system? Yes.
Sir, in distributed operating system, all the processes are done on the server side, and the rest are dumb terminals. And in the network operating system, all have the same configuration, same type of configuration, and all the processes are done on all the systems. Not all the requests are not sent to the server.
Okay.
It is done on all the systems.
Okay, now I think I will. You are partially correct, but let me add some value to it. See, basically, the one thing, the difference. First is what is the common between the two. Let's try to understand like this. You see, both distributed operating system and network operating system supports. They always assume that all machines are connected together, right? So they must have to be network. That is the basic point to understand now. Now the difference between is that when we talk of the distributed operating system, yeah, they are basically used for computational purpose. For example, I give you a small example now. Like for example, I am doing some scientific computations and my machine is not a dumb terminal. My machine is well equipped now. It is not necessary that it is a dumb terminal. My machine could be intelligent terminal also, or it is an intelligent machine itself. Right, it is not required that it has to be a dumb terminal at all. I mean, that is not the basic requirement. It is a very intelligent machine I am working on. Now what happened that my machine is not capable enough to handle that computations in some small chunk of time now. So it is job, or let us say the software is not sufficient enough, or the CPU is not powerful enough, or the memory is not sufficient enough to handle the computation which you have given to the systems now. So it is job of there are many other issues are there like in operating system, but I will just give you some thread to it. It is job of the operating system to or let us say the port or to export certain part of your program which cannot be handled there, maintain or store the status of that program where from it has been broken there, take this program somewhere else, run this program there and get the result there itself, and you as a user might not be aware of it, right? That is the basic idea. Now what I am talking about is the one clear cut difference between the two is the first one is used more for scientific applications or more for computational purpose, where the system takes care of all your requirement. You as a user are not aware of which dev site will be available for doing all. This is basic difference, theoretical level difference. Now system will take care of it, wherein network operating system is more for the network administration, like which you have been coming all time, which you have seen all your organizations and so on, like window NT, right? They are more on, but window NT can also be a distributed operating system provided they have added some utility to over it. So there is difference between the two. One major difference is, one of the major differences that in network operating system user has to do lots of administration regarding website and so on, where in distributed operating system the system takes care of most of the requirements. Now that is the very minor thin difference has been put between the two now.
Sir, any example of distributed operating?
I am not telling you that today today take example of Unix now. Unix, you can say Unix is both as a what we call them distributed operating system. They support the network operating system and so on. Today I am saying very little difference now. Today most of the object oriented database system are not a full fledged object oriented from the scratch. What they have done is on the backbone or the basic layers are of the RDBMS, and they have added some layer on the top of it which works as a distributed. This is the way they are designing today now. So today the distributed operating system is designed based on the network operating system. They have to be network operating system first and so on. That way we can do it. You understand the basic? Yes. Right? So in network operating system, a user has to do lots of administration and is not meant for computational purpose, whereas distributed operating system is meant for that type of applications now. So certain utility has to be supported, not more than that.
So what is the basic difference between buffering and spooling?
The basic in the context of you are talking about the operating system now.
Yes,
we have asked these questions number of times, I thought. Who can answer these questions now? Yes, who can little bit give some ideas now? Who can answer this question now? I will just give you a small clue now, right? You try to find out the answer to it, because we have very much explained this concept in the book now. You try to, I think you are just recalling and asking, you just read this one, you take from the output to the input now. I am giving you real advantage, this is the basic, what are real advantage of both these schemes now. The real advantage of both these schemes, either you talk of the buffering or you talk of the spilling, to speed up the CPU time. CPU, you know that basically today this is where you try to find out the answer now. The purpose, the objective of both the scheme is to speed up the CPU time, that is CPU should not wait for the what we will call them should not have lots of idle time for execution now. This is a starting point, and then you try to find answer between the two. Like for example, today what we have, right? Today we have many concepts. You see today why we have, for example, I am just giving you again, don't try to link with these two concepts now. The buffering and spooling both are used to speed up the CPU time. We have many other schemes are there, but don't try to compare, don't try to link with it. Like for example, why we have a registers now? You tell me one thing. You know, we have a RAM which works very fast, it's faster than your hard disk now, but why we have a RAM now? RAM basically the data which CPU is working with it is not stored into the RAM, because RAM compared to the CPU is still very slower. Those data are put into the registers now, because registers are as fast as or let's say associative memory, for example, they are as fast as the what we call them CPU time, right? So basically they work for that purpose. But more I have not given you enough, just given some clues what for their use, how they really work, that you find out.
So the same question, buffering and spooling. In buffering, it was said ki it doesn't overlap the input of one process to the output of another one. But in spooling, the process is overlapped. Ki input of one is overlapped by the output of other.
That is all right. But I don't know. But basic what we are getting out of it.
Okay.
What I am getting out, that I am telling you, I have not explained how these two mechanisms are really working. What I have explained to you, the basic advantage of both the scheme is that you have to speed up the CPU time.
So it means ki in buffering, one process is processed fully, then after that it takes the second process. But in spooling, it does a parallel processing.
See basically spooling. The parallel processing, you see basically what happens sometimes in system, otherwise I am not talking about it. You always think like this, even the single machine, single CPU based machine also, there is some parallelism is going on, there is some overlapping of activities going on. For example, what happens really is, you have to understand this whole subject from a different angle, that is why I am not going into detail. Take example of what happens is, you see what happens is, take example of if you have to take the print out. Now printing, suppose I have to do long printing now. So what really CPU does is, today you have another chip today, most of the system they have called DMA chip, direct memory access chip now. Now what this DMA chip does, basically the DMA chip takes care of all these processes now. It takes only one cycle from the CPU time, and the remaining whole printing operation is basically taken care of it, and in between CPU does its own job. Right. So basically they try, even in single CPU based system also, that lots of overlapping is going to, taking place, or parallelism is taking place now. So DMA is one such example, the buffering is another such example, but buffering and spooling is very at lower level scale. It basically to overlapping or speed up the CPU time or achieve some parallelism of some kind going on. No, normal CPU, that basically I have asked the students now that okay, I am running a multi-threaded program, you tell me, just very related to these questions now, do you think that you require many CPUs time, many CPUs? You understand my questions now? I have told you in the beginning itself that multi-threading is a good candidate for running a parallel program, it is a very good candidate, and people, and any machine you will see after some time will have a number of CPUs, they must have, and writing a compiler or writing a virtual machine for a multi-threaded type of programming language is very easy. Exploiting them, you understand, today everything has to be done by the CPU, but we are doing it concurrently. But when we have, but the switching over time is so fast in the multi-threaded programming is that you don't visualize them, right? But when you have a multiple CPU based system, you will think that Java virtual machine or Java compiler will be simply passing each thread to a particular CPU, and they will keep on working it. But one more thing, again from your architecture, I am taking you somewhere the computer architecture side, but when we say parallel machine, the different type of machine configuration, I just tell you, just try to read now. I think we have somehow in the BIT first trimester CSI 01, this topic I have just introduced this topic now, because see today 2-3 subjects are interrelated, you don't minus one subject. Like for example, operating system, hardware, computer hardware, or let's say even networking, somehow interrelated now. So, to understand operating system, all these buzzwords which you have talked, you have to understand the computer architecture also. That the 4 classification of the parallel computers are there. You remember, single instruction, single data, single instructions, multiple data. But when we say for example, today we have a supercomputer now. But when we say supercomputer, not necessarily we mean that we have more than one CPU, not necessary. Control unit might be one, but ALU might be many, but control unit is only one itself. That we try to understand the whole. So, designing part is entirely different. Don't think that by supercomputer I mean number of CPUs, not necessary. The CPU, what it contains, 2 components, control unit and the ALU. So, they have only one control unit, but multiple ALU, something like this. Same multiplications operation is being executed by number of the ALUs, but they are working with different data. This is called single instructions, multiple data. This is one classification of new system which is coming up now. So, they all are designed so that system is designed so that CPU time should be utilized to up to the maximum. I told you, I have given you in this studio one example that we have a machine called connection machine which contains 64,000 CPU. Now, but for that you have to write a algorithm so that all the 64,000 CPUs should be busy. You have to write an operating system for it, you have to write a compiler for it, then only you can exploit them. Not simply adding more CPUs and writing a program in just von Neumann style. That system will not work. Yes, please.
Sir, can we say multi-threading parallel processing? Can we say it? Is there any parallel processing?
This is the question I am answering right from the beginning. By multi-threading, never, this is the answer people have been asking, that how can you write a multi-threaded program on a single CPUs. It is what you have on most of the machines. I have seen that they have single CPU based now, but multi-threading is a good candidate for writing parallel program, because each thread can work on its own CPU, but the compiler written so far for the machine in which you have been working, this compiler are written for only single CPU itself. Single CPU they work, right. So, all the threads are working on a single CPU, but the switching over time is so fast that they exploit CPU time maximum and so on. Because thread is very, for example, I am doing some animations, for example I am giving you, because you have to do little bit of multimedia part of it. In Java you will try to understand. If I am doing a multimedia, if I am doing animations, suppose I want to animate my picture now. So, I have taken multiple frames of my pictures now, and these all pictures will be loaded one frame after another frame. The loading time between one frame and another frame might be 10 millisecond. This time has been calculated now. This 10 millisecond CPU time is just idle, CPU is not doing anything. A thread can be created that within 10 millisecond you can do something else. That is the whole idea now. So, Java you have to understand, and I have been telling you right from the beginning, of course, learning tool, syntax, technology is one thing, but the idea behind it, the philosophy behind it, understanding something else. A employer today looks you, not that you have to be know a Oracle programmer or you are this programmer, that you can do from any other private institutes now, but learning holding some degree of this kind from some university, they mean that you are theoretically as much equipped now. Yes, please.
So, formatting floppy, a very basic question, sir. Why do we format a floppy? Means if we always format a floppy for use, why doesn't it come from the company formatted previously? Why does we have a tool for formatting a floppy? What is the need of formatting?
See, basically the idea is something like this. The the whole informations are organized in certain linear fashions. When I put your data into the RAM, or when I put data into this is in generic figure, and this might vary, from one operating system to another operating system, because you see that sometimes my floppy today is not working. That would another interesting problem today, which I have planned so much to talk about. But anyway, we have some good alternative today. See, the basic idea is because all the informations have to be organized in certain form. So, basically it puts them into tracks, sectors, again the ending of one tracks, one sectors, the size of that one. So, basic idea of formatting is that so that information should be organized them accordingly in that fashions now. That is the basic understanding now. You understand this one?
Yes.
That is the basic idea.
Sir, what is the ATM technology?
ATM, see the ATM is basically today we have, I will just give you first advantage of why we are going for ATM today. Today ATM is being used as a backbone. No, today what we have, most of the ISPs today, internet service provider, they have to support, let's say, the 100 Mbps of data, right? So I want to download certain image file and something which require very complex image files now. So you have to, so ATM is basically technology, it's a networking technology, just like FDDI. No, in computer network we come across with number of technology, like ATM is one such technology, FDDI is another such technology, Ethernet is another such technology, right? And they all differ in terms of the switching techniques. ATM has entirely different type of switching technique in terms of the formats and so on. So ATM, the real advantage of the ATM is the format size is smaller one, and the switching time, if you have a very small format, a small size of packet, then switching time is very small now. You understand this one? What you have today, take example of you have a what we will call them normal Ethernet packet now. They come into something 1024 bytes onwards now. Where in ATM the size of the packet is always in terms of 53 octets or 53 bytes now. So if you have a smaller size of packet, then switching time is much more higher now. You see, just there are many other issues are there. ATM, I mean, I have to compare ATM with whole TCP/IP or the OSI model, right? Then you can understand the topics very well. But that's in nutshell is basically today is used as a switching mechanism, right? Most of these switching exchange might be having the ATM backbone, or most of the ISP today are going to have this one, because through ATM they support the fiber optics lines, that very well, and the switching time is much more faster than any of the networking technology which you have come across. That is why the speed is very much right. You understand, the number one is the what we will call them the error handling is much more less, or error occurrences in the ATM is much more less than most of other technology now. That is why people are using them. So it's basically network technology and being used today, just like FDDI is being used as a backbone. No, which backbone means what? Backbone means that supports many other networks. You understand? For support many other network for transmission of the data. Anyway, so this I mean, if you have let me just conclude our topics today. We had a very open discussions. We discussed certain questions related to basics of Java and the computer networking, and we are meeting again on Monday, and from Monday we are starting a series of lectures on the computer network, starting from the OSI model. The basic will not start very basic, but the few important fundamentals of the OSI model, TCP/IP model, and different type of network technology. Okay, now with this coming to an end, thank you very much.